today we are releasing a portion of the videotape that was provided to us by the state of Michigan Attorney General's office regarding the killing of Cornelius Frederick at the Lakeside for Children facility in Kalamazoo that is run by Sequel Youth Services, which is a multi-state for-profit business that runs many homes such as this and facilities in other states. Just to provide a little background, you are aware that Cornelius Frederick was 16 years old. He was killed in the facility in which he resided. Three of the perpetrators have been charged. You will see on the videotape that far more people were involved in his killing, and I'm calling on the Kalamazoo prosecutor to charge those additional people. There are many more than two people suffocating him, and the nurse who just stood over his lifeless body and provided no help whatsoever to Cornelius, other than calling 911. There are far more people involved. It is a horrific videotape, and it demonstrates what other employees have told us is a culture of fear and abuse at the Lakeside facility. One employee told us that in order to work there, all you needed was to be breathing and accept $13 per hour in pay. Other than that, they would hire anyone. And the mechanism for dealing with children in this facility was abuse and fear. In fact, suffocation was regularly practiced upon children. They called it fearing. The state of Michigan, in its investigation, disclosed that Cornelius had previously been suffocated as a form of discipline by the staff members at Lakeside. And clearly this is not the first instance of its kind. Cornelius, I indicated, was 16 years old. His mother had passed away in her sleep. Cornelius was home and seen her die. He was traumatized. When she passed away, his father had been imprisoned. So effectively, he was an orphan and he had no one to stay with. And that is why we have facilities in the state such as Lakeside for Children. And that's why he was there. He was a gregarious, well-liked child. He was a mentor for younger children. He had been traumatized because of his father's death, and he was simply a scared child. He was executed on April 29th of this year, going into May 1st, for the crime of throwing a sandwich, which you'll see in the videotape. Then a gaggle of employees pounced on him. You'll see his feet lifelessly lying there, and you'll see these employees suffocating him to death. He urinated on himself. They deprived him of oxygen, and his brain suffered irreversible brain damage. He did not die until the next day. He was kept alive on life support, but the reason he died was because his brain had suffered hypoxic brain damage, and so the doctors could not keep him alive. He was suffocated for a period of almost, it looks to me, in excess of 10 minutes, and then left to lie on a floor, lifeless, with no one providing any medical care or treatment for him, including a nurse who is there, and you will see her in the videotape, just looking at him, bending over, never even touching him, never providing any CPR, any care whatsoever for them. And what occurred to me as I watched this videotape is that the employees of this institution don't consider these children to be human beings. This wasn't anyone's child, and as far as they're concerned, Cornelius wasn't a human being. He was a commodity. And as a result, this type of inhuman behavior could exist. The fact that the state of Michigan has now lifted its license, albeit much too late, is evidence of what's going on in these type of facilities. And believe me, this fish is rotted from the top down. The reason we got the videotape from the Attorney General and not Sequel Youth Services and Lakeside is Lakeside wouldn't give us the tape. They tried to negotiate with us and say, if we signed a confidentiality agreement and agreed not to disclose the tape, this is a company that is doing business in this state and many other states. This is a company in which you'll see their employees killed a child. And their response to me when they found out that I was involved and was filing a lawsuit is that they would give me the videotape if I agreed to keep it secret, if I agreed that I would not disclose it to the press, and that I would negotiate with them over Cornelius's life that they said was worth less than $1 million, because he was in Kalamazoo and he was a child who had no parents. So they said, you know, why don't we just pay you less than $1 million and we'll keep this all secret. It's intolerable that this has gone on, and that other children, possibly not only in this state, have been subjected to this kind of barbarism, but other children are being subjected to it because this company is operating in other states too with impunity. And so with that, I'm going to play the video. You can all watch it, and then we will come back and answer some questions.
Every time one of the people on the
at the end of it. All right, if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer them at this time. Yes, sir.
I have a question here. Darren Cunningham with Channel 7. At what point did they call 911? You know, watching that.
Well, when you review the video again, you'll see the nurse standing there watching, and several minutes after he's lying there, there's apparently a call by the nurse. She does nothing to in any way assist him and do what she's supposed to do. But several minutes after he's lying there, you'll see her slightly walk away, talk on a phone, and we believe that's the 911 call from the nurse. She's been charged with child abuse for failing to render care to Cornelius in a timely manner.
That goes to my next question as far as the charges. You said 2 people have been charged?
Only, to my understanding, the 2 gentlemen that you see standing over Cornelius at the very beginning when he threw the sandwich are the people who have been charged. But as you can see in the video, far more than 2 people are involved in suffocating him. And I want to clarify also, I indicated that the Attorney General's office had provided the video. The prosecutor's office has provided the video, not the Attorney General's office. But with that correction, the prosecutor was only charged, I believe, those 2 gentlemen, and has not charged, and I would urge them to reconsider the other people involved who are clearly involved in the killing of Cornelius. I mean, you'll be able to, and we've done it, you'll be able to take this videotape, and with the expertise that your people will have, you can do a lot of close-up work with this videotape. There's also portions. We've given the videotape to a forensic examiner. There's portions of this videotape that are missing. It jumps, and there's suddenly people are no longer in the scene that were there 1 second before. There's been cuts made to this video. We're not suggesting the prosecutor did it. We don't know how it occurred at all. But you'll be able to see things like Cornelius urinated on himself during the time in which they were killing him. You'll be able to see his pants. You'll see his shoes if you go back and look at while they're suffocating him. He's not fighting at all, because you'll see his shoes are just, and his feet are just lying there. So while these maniacs, and I use that word advisedly because I think that's being kind to maniacs, are killing him for no reason whatsoever.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
My name's Liz Ionelli. I am a troubled teen industry survivor and expert. Has anyone verified the credentials of the apparent nurse that was there at that time?
We have not. The prosecutor has identified her as a nurse. I don't know if she's an RN, if she's an LPN, or if she's in fact a nurse, because I have not been provided that information yet. So you'll have to go to the prosecutor's office to determine what classification she was.
Okay, thank you.
Jeffrey, I wonder if I can ask a question. This is
Sure, Charlie.
Charlie Langton. Jeffrey, it looks like the entity that you're suing is a private company, but because they take in wards of the state, do they get any kind of immunity or qualified immunity in this?
No, they don't, although I'm quite certain that they're going to ask for it. Their attorney has suggested to me, for instance, that I would be capped under the malpractice cap, because what really happened to Cornelius was a medical procedure of choking him to death. And in Michigan, there's a cap of $450,000 if you commit malpractice upon a child who has no income. So they suggested that sort of cap. Because this is a private company, and we have not sued them under 1983, I do not believe that they are clothed with what you're talking about, which would be becoming a state actor and then be entitled to qualified immunity. What I'm more concerned about, though, however, is that the state of Michigan, my understanding is, was paying, and it does pay, these type of companies over $1,000 a day per child. So these children become commodities to this organization. This organization is headed by a gentleman who used to be the CEO of 48 Hour Fitness. What qualifications he has to run these facilities is beyond me. And apparently, and we're getting accumulating a lot of information, this place was more than a snake pit. The main goal of this place was the bottom line. Children and the care of children and the education of children were incidental to their bottom line. And the children were ruled by fear. One employee, and we have this actually in writing, referred to the Lakeside for Children school as Death Row Academy. And it's really frightening. I mean, these children aren't criminals. They're not accused of any crime. Cornelius didn't have parents. He was a child, and he was brutalized in that fashion. It's unbelievable. But more to the point, they think they can get away with it. To this day, you need to be contacting Sequel. It's called Sequel. That's the overarching company. That's the multi-state company that runs these facilities, who's owned by 48-Hour Fitness Guru, who's run some other companies into bankruptcy. You need to do some investigation on how many other children have died on their hands. I know of one right now, another child in Oklahoma who died the first day he entered a Sequel facility, but I'm sure there are others.
Mr. Feiger, do you have the videos? My name is Sarah Gelser. I'm a state senator from Oregon and have been very interested in Sequel because they have had and harmed many of our children who are all back. Are you able to get the videos of similar restraints in other facilities to just kind of look across the board at this as their practice? And also, I noticed in the video that there's a point at which they throw that ukru pad at the kind of pile of the restraint. Is there any understanding of why that happened? Because that is Sequel's consistent answer, that they are implementing ukru, but those pads are not for throwing.
Right. No, I don't have an answer for that yet because we've just begun our discovery, and we're not getting a lot of cooperation from Sequel. They will not provide information on even the people involved, let alone other instances. Of course, we'll be able to get that information eventually through discovery, but Sequel's desire at this point was to deny us access to the tape, claim that Cornelius was worth less than $1 million, and why don't we just get over it? And that was, they've been on top of this in terms of their exposure since the minute it happened. They're very worried about their financial impact. I've seen zero concern from them in terms of the abuse of children. And I'm glad you pointed that out, that you're from another state, Oregon, because I'm sure you're aware of the child that died in Oklahoma. And I've been informed that this isn't a practice that is not isolated to the state of Michigan, that it's been a practice that has been discovered in many other facilities. This is what happens when you privatize and you turn over facilities that really should be much more regulated and overseen. It's similar to what's happened in states that have attempted to set up private penal institutions where things are done for profit instead of for the real.
They own those too. They own several of those. Sequel does.
Oh yeah, I'm sure of that. So that's and so they've done everything they can to try to avoid me doing what I'm doing today, including trying. They to this day have not given me this videotape and refused to give it to me. But thankfully, the prosecutor did. Any other questions?
Mr. Feiger, I have a question. My name is Alice Hines and I'm with Vice News. I'm wondering, big picture, what you're hoping to accomplish with this lawsuit and how the video that we just saw plays in.
It's to what we were just discussing. I'm hoping to disclose to the people of not only the state of Michigan, but the United States, that the privatization of these facilities that are run for profit and institutionalized children who have no choice in the matter are being treated as commodities and not as human beings. The more that we shine a light upon this type of barbaric behavior, this was subhuman behavior. He did nothing. And the people who were in control and were in positions of authority did this to him. And these people were basically following a culture and a procedures that they regularly employed upon children. So this was not an isolated occurrence. And so children are really powerless and they're voiceless. The kinds of horrors that we've witnessed on this videotape would never be disclosed to us if Cornelius had survived. Now remember, I told you earlier, Cornelius was subjected to another incident in January of this year where they also suffocated him. But suffocation was a form of discipline. So the horrors that children have to endure have to be exposed. Unless you shine lights on insects and maggots, they proliferate. And certainly this type of behavior is not human. It can only be akin to a subhuman species that would inflict this kind of punishment and pain and cruelty upon children. I can't equate that with a human behavior, not in my lexicon of humanness.
Mr. Feiger,
Yeah.
Mr. Feiger, on behalf of the survivors of institutional abuse, I just want to really thank you for standing up and working on this for us. We've needed somebody like you in our corner. Children have been murdered in these facilities for decades. The U.S. government has known about this. For-profit facilities cannot be trusted with our children's safety. I want to know, what is the state of Michigan doing for the other kids who witnessed this murder? Where are these children? Are they safe or in another institution, just like Lakeside?
Well, that's a really good question. We've been contacted by 4 or 5 children that witnessed Cornelius being killed. One of the children was at the next table and has repeatedly advised us that Cornelius said, "I can't breathe, I can't breathe." Of course he couldn't breathe because he was being suffocated. I mean, that's not a unique statement. When you begin suffocating somebody, the reaction is, "I can't breathe, you're suffocating me." Other children have been traumatized. Their parents have contacted us, and they've asked me to represent them, 4 or 5 of the children who witnessed the actual killing of Cornelius. The state of Michigan has lifted, as far as I understand, sequel's license, but I am not clear as to how then and what happened to the children at Lakeside. I'm calling on the state of Michigan, Governor Whitmer, and other authorities who would be directly involved in this to explain to us, where are these children now? What have you done in terms of the disclosures that we're now making about the type of activities that went on in these facilities? And where are the children now in terms of who is providing the protection for them? I can't give you that answer. I will tell you this, though, that you didn't hear about this until we announced that we were filing suit, Mr. John Marco and myself. Until that time, nobody from the state of Michigan announced to you or advised to you that a child had been brutally suffocated in a Michigan facility. You didn't hear about it for well over a month and a half after the events. And it's only when we disclosed it and we said we were bringing a civil case that Governor Whitmer announced she was removing their licensure. And now you've become aware of it. So what was going on in that month and a half, almost 2 months since his killing? That's what happens regularly, this kind of conspiracy of silence. These are children, okay? This wasn't, we have the George Floyd situation where the officers were arguably, I'm not defending them, but arguably involved in arresting somebody. Cornelius Frederick did nothing. He's a child. He threw a sandwich. and he was executed on videotape. Man, I don't know what it takes in America to have a shockwave go through this country and say, this is not a unique situation. This is not an isolated occurrence. This is going on every day somewhere in America. One more question.
Oh, unless anybody else has something, I was just going to say something quickly.
Okay.
I attended a program in the 90s and I was wrapped in a blanket and duct tape for 8 days from, 94 to 97. So this is a common, although he wasn't wrapped in a blanket, I could have easily been Cornelius. I was left for 8 days in a prone position. So this is not new to the industry. And thank you for everything that you're doing.
There will be further disclosures about the atrocities that occurred in this institution. I just want to make clear, this was not an isolated case. And Sequel, the overriding company, knew about it. They know about the method in which people were disciplined. Nobody had to be qualified to do anything there, except, as I indicated to you, be able to breathe and accept $13 an hour. No qualifications whatsoever. And they regularly discipline children by suffocating. Thanks all for attending.